From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes. Brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. And it's yet another episode of 10K Takes Television. And we're, late May now, Memorial Weekend coming up, all that good stuff. So the Minnesota Twins are the dominant team in this market. And the Lynx have started, and Minnesota United's playing, and the Saints are playing. But it's mostly Twins, am I right?
Yeah, it's mostly Twins, and it's, they're a mediocre team in a bad division, which puts them right at the top, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to do much to stay up there, and they didn't do much on that West Coast road trip last week, and they're, the injuries are starting to pile up. I think that should be a concern. Polanco is out again. Tyler Mahle, we find out,
two-fifths of their rotation is gone.
Out for the season.
Kenta Maeda, Tyler Mahle.
Kenta Maeda's out. Trevor Larnach.
Nick Gordon's out for a few weeks.
Trevor Larnach with pneumonia. I mean, the list goes on and on. Fortunately, at the time of this recording anyway, Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa are in the lineup. But, and those things, that is what derailed them.
and Carlos Correa, and I do believe he eventually gets on track. But the Giants were here this week. You and I were out there and saw some of those games. They wanted him. He was a coveted commodity. Right. They thought they had him, and then everything broke down with the medical stuff and the ankle.
Right.
I think the Giants are probably saying, we're good. Brandon Crawford isn't hitting at shortstop. He got a worse average than Carlos Correa.
If that's possible.
But think about what the Giants were willing to invest in him.
Right.
And they were going to give him the San Francisco Mint.
Yeah. Well, and, Carlos coming into the week was hitting 219. I mean, that's not very good. Well, it's better than he was a week ago. He was hitting like a $180 coming into the week before, but he's heated up a little bit, so I'm not going to throw too many darts at Carlos. But as you watch, you're right. I mean, the Giants probably looking at those numbers and saying, well, our guy isn't very good either, but at least we're not paying him $40 million a year.
Yeah. Now, again, it can change. And
sure.
2 hot weeks, and he's got the average up, to 260, 270. But as of this point in time, he hasn't really got, untracked offensively. And as you said, the Twins, it's all about location. The geography is saving them. The AL Central, top to bottom, clearly the worst division in Major League Baseball.
Although the NL Central isn't far behind.
No, something about baseball in mid-America.
Yeah, not very good.
Flyover land, man. It's not very good. You're right. And so this season's starting to me to look and feel a lot like last year, where the Twins were on top until basically Labor Day. Then they cratered. Your Guardians ran them down and won the division. Now, look, I don't think Cleveland's very good right now. Sorry about that. But,
whatever.
But if Cleveland makes a move or two and gets a bat in the next 2 months, it's there to be won for Cleveland, Detroit, maybe even the Chicago White Sox.
Don't say Kansas City, because that's not happening.
Not yet. You got to get under double digits games out. Then I'll put the Royals in the race.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, Cleveland just can't hit the baseball.
No.
I mean, their pitching is going to come around because Tristan McKenzie is going to come back, and so is Aaron Savali. They're both going to be back, and plus they got this young guy, this Bybee kid, who's pretty good too. So it looks like they're stacked pitching-wise again. But they can't hit the baseball. They're worse than the Twins hitting. That's saying something because the Twins aren't hitting the ball either.
Yeah, so you can't expect your pitchers to go out and win 1-0 every
No, and
that puts happen.
Well, and it, in as much as it does for Cleveland, it's the same thing with the Twins. You can't expect your starting rotation to go out there and hold somebody, and you're only scoring 1 or 2 runs.
I always try to look at that glass as being half full.
Okay.
There are people watching us who don't have air conditioning. If you want to cool off, the hot weather's here. Go to trendy Target Field. The Twins lead the majors in strikeouts. So it'll be free air conditioning. Tickets are cheap. You can get into the ballpark cheap. So you'll be cool, you'll be comfortable, and you'll see MLB.
You'll see a lot of breeze.
A lot of interleague play, just like you like.
Yeah, boy. I know folks were really excited to go see the San Francisco Giants this week.
Well, I was. I know you weren't. I did see a fan with a Willie Mays jersey on. That was pretty cool.
All right, I could live with that. Was it a Mets jersey or was it Giants?
It was Giants,
Oh, okay.
and it wasn't Minneapolis Millers.
It wasn't Minneapolis.
Where he played briefly.
That's true. I see that Rocco is going to be here for a little longer, huh? He's going to get an extension. Are you on board with that?
Wow.
He hesitates.
Yeah, that's a pause. Look, Rocco's done some good things. I mean, there's no doubt. These records not bad, but I think it's the MO, not just of Rocco, but the organization. Derek Falvey, Thad Levine, the way they want him to manage and run this baseball team.
He's doing it.
He is. He's carrying out their marching orders, and that I don't like because we've talked about it a lot. They stick to the script. They're tethered to the laptop, the computer, the analytics, and it just feels so robotic the way he manages a game. But who knows? He might have this team in the playoffs. Somebody's going to win the AL Central.
That's true.
By default.
Yeah, probably by default. I don't know. He's their guy because, as you said, he marches to their orders, and he wants to keep his job, so he just does as he is told. I know you were told by an insider that he even gets calls and or texts during the game telling him what to do. So they pretty much have him, on the end of a puppet string.
And I would like to know whose ultimate decision it is to not put Byron Buxton in center field. Somebody is saying don't do it. Now, look, he missed a game last week in Orange County, but basically he's played as a DH.
Yep.
But I don't think he's touched the outfield grass this year. Everything he does is at the plate or around the bases. And I think that's really... It's an opportunity lost. Fans go to the ballpark to see guys like Byron Buxton, to see him play center field. Michael A. Taylor's very good. He's got a Gold Glove, but Buxton is Buxton. And that's part of that Twins MO that I don't like. I've run into a lot of people who say, when's he going to be out in center field? And Al Newman told us he thinks 30 to 35 games. And if you were to bet over and under, I might take the under on that.
I would be taking the under right about now because I'm not sure he's going to be out there. And I'm not sure Rocco knows who he could bat leadoff or who he should bat leadoff these days. I mean, for goodness sakes, he tried Joey Gallo, the strikeout king. Now, Gallo's going to hit a few home runs, and he has already, and he has a history of being able to do that. But he strikes out a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you put a strikeout king as your leadoff guy?
I don't know. Their leadoff guy's in SoFlo, South Florida.
Yeah,
Luis
you're right. Luis Arise. That's a guy that you want to bat leadoff. I don't know. Try Michael A. Taylor.
I'd be okay with Taylor there because he's got speed.
Yeah.
Average is better than Joey Gallo's. And Joey Gallo doesn't want to bat leadoff. He said that.
He's never batted leadoff in his life, and I believe it. He's a big guy who's got a big swing. He's not gonna run deep into counts and, hit a bunch of foul balls and try to slap it the other way. He's trying to hit it in the upper deck every time he bats. And if he doesn't, he strikes out usually.
They're an interesting baseball team. One thing you and I know because we're at the ballpark a lot.
Right.
Okay, I saw 2 of the games with the Chicago Cubs. They drew well with the Cubs in town on a weekend. But let me tell you, that was primarily the Cubs fandom coming in and buying at least half the tickets. Toronto's here this weekend. It'll be the same thing. You'll see tour buses parked in downtown Minneapolis with license plates that say Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario. Because this is their beloved Blue Jays, and Minneapolis is closer to where they live than Toronto is. My point is, the Twins are in first, but I still feel like Twins territory is not buying in, and I think some of that is because of the robotic approach to the game.
I agree.
I think it turns people off.
By the way, they're last in the league in stolen bases, and this is supposed to be the year of the stolen base.
Wow. All right, well, we're going to take off for a second and bring you segment number 2 here coming up. This is 10K Takes, your Twins ticket.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10,000 takes. Wally and Eric. Eric looks like You stole somebody's bedspread there with that shirt, huh?
Wow. I'm in a lumberjack type movie.
It is a lumberjack.
Heading up north. Paul Bunyan, baby.
Oh, dear. All right. Speaking of up north, our guy Chuck Foreman, former Viking great, joins us now. And Chuck, you were prominently featured in an article in the New York Times this week talking about the great Jim Brown and some of the interaction you had with him. Why don't you share with us what that was like and some of the things you remember from those conversations?
Well, I'll just tell you this. Back in my time growing up, he was the guy you wanted to be when you played football. Jim Brown. He was the greatest of all time. He still is the greatest that ever lived to play any position in football, in my opinion. And I had an opportunity in Miami down at one of the Super Bowls down at this place called the Jockey Club to sit down with him. There was Franco Harris there, myself, a bunch of other guys there, and just talking and just to actually the first time and just to be around him and sit down and just to listen to him was just like, and I was like, I'm sitting next to Jim Brown. And, in the conversation, he said to me, he says, you're sure playing some great football. You're doing it different than everybody else, but you're great. You're doing great. And I'm like, wow, that's coming from Jim Brown.
Yeah.
I think that was actually my first MVP. And then he said to me, and don't let 2 inches ruin your career. I'm like, in other words, don't fight for 2 inches when you can come back and get 10 yards the next play. The best advice I think I ever got, all as far as running a football goes, because you never really think about it, because you want to fight for that yard and you want to fight and fight and fight. But when you can't go any further, you got to go down and come back the next play. I remember when Adrian Peterson hurt himself. He got hurt in the game.
Right.
He was fighting for a couple of inches. There was nowhere else for him to go. And then somebody from the Redskins hit him, and he was out. He came back really good, but I'm just saying that was the kind of stuff that he would talk about. But just to sit there and listen to his experiences and knowing all the stuff that he did to help open doors, the sacrifices he made, back in the day when he was with the Cleveland Browns, he had one of his greatest seasons. You would know that, Wally. He had like 1,500 yards, and I can't tell you how many touchdowns. And that was just in 12 games. And, he wanted to get a contract with new contract, and Art Modell said no. And he said, well, I'll see you later. He went to Hollywood, and, and everything else is history. A great guy, great man. It was a privilege to know him.
Chuck, his impact on civil rights, too, was huge.
Right.
He organized the Cleveland Summit with Muhammad Ali and then Lou Alcindor, now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, and himself. Russell. And you were a young African-American athlete then. What did that tell you at that time?
I knew right at that time when I watched those guys, the greatest of every sport there, standing up for our rights as human beings and making that sacrifice. And only that four, at that time, could have stood up and made those, and made it known what we wanted, just to be equal, and that in itself, I think for all of us, especially in sports, that you know what, we can do and accomplish anything. All we got to do is follow that path and do the things that we need to do to get there, because these guys opened up the door, actually knocked down a whole bunch of doors, to give us an opportunity to play. I mean, I played in the South, man. I was one of the first black athletes in the South at the University of Miami, the third black guy there, and when I was down there, you talk about the Southeast Conference, you look at it now, 90% of the rosters are black. Whereas in my day, like half of a percent. There was only maybe one on each team or none. And I remember when I was, I don't know what I was. I don't know. I was a sophomore, junior in college. I don't know, but USC was playing Alabama, and Alabama was ranked #1. They had Johnny Musso, and I forgot the quarterback they had, but he was supposed to be pretty good. And USC beat the crap out of them. And at the end of the game in the interview, Bear Bryant says, "I got to get me some of those guys."
Yeah, Sam Bam Cunningham.
And Ben Cunningham and Charles Young, they beat the crap out of them. Vince Evans, and that was his words. That word, or like, I got to get me some of them, or something. But bottom line was, I think Bear Bryant, from what I understood, did a lot or contributed a lot, maybe equipment wise or whatever, to a lot of black schools down there in Alabama, because he knew at the time he couldn't recruit them. But he knew at some point in time he would be able to.
So, Chuck, how many or what percentage of the players now do you think understand what Jim Brown did, as far as civil rights or as rights as a player? Let's not even get into the civil rights, just rights as an NFL player, as opposed to guys who played in your era right on the heels of when Jim Brown played and when he held the summit and that type of thing. The guys in the 70s had to have at least understood what he was doing. But nowadays, now we're 40, 50 years later. That's a little different. Do you think that there are guys out there that understand all this?
I don't think there are. I don't think there. There's some, no question about it. But I would say the majority of them never even thought about it. How the door opened for them, the sacrifices these guys made, to get them where they are today. Don't they understand that when I was in the league, there was no free agency? Don't they know when I was in the league that you had no control of them? They could tell you how to cut your hair, what to wear, all that type of stuff. How you put your uniform on. That was the way it was back then. And if you had something on your mind, you better be careful about how you spoke it, because you might not be in the league. And that was and even before me, just imagine that when Jim Brown and all those guys had that summit, way before I was even in college. I was in high school, 1965 or something like that, 64 when they did that. But I really don't believe that many of these young players today don't even know how they got and how the door was open for them to be doing what they do.
Or so heard of Jim Brown until this week.
Right. And so a lot of them probably didn't know who Jim Brown was. Yeah. They don't even know how the sacrifices guys made to get them where they are today. And then you have some of these guys out there, whether they're basketball players or football players, acting like clowns, thinking that thing's going to last forever, not appreciating what it is. Let me tell you, this is the way it is. Playing professional sports is a privilege. It's not a given, and that's just the way it is. And, as big as you may be, the ownership is always bigger. Now, the only thing I can say about a player today is that if he does leave, he should be able to leave in good financial condition. Even if he only played 3 years, you should at least have a couple $1 million in the bank after you get your house and all that stuff. You should be in a good position to decide. You have plenty of time to decide what you want to do, and you have some money if you need to use it to do what you want to do. These guys now are not all. There's too many. Don't appreciate the sacrifices people made so they could be where they are today, and that's no doubt, no lie.
Chuck, we're up against the clock, but give me your 20, 30-second recap of Bud's ceremony, a celebration of life on Sunday at U.S. Bank Stadium. I know you were there.
Right. It was a great celebration for Bud. The public got an opportunity to see the type of man he was, the type of coach he was, the type of people he coached, the way he handled business, the way he handled himself, his family. You know, the dedication he had to the fans up here. He was a simple man. He didn't require a lot. But, you know, as far as a coach goes, he certainly showed all of us how to be a professional. There's a lot of, hey, you're a pro when you get drafted. Being a professional is a whole totally different thing. He set you know, with our team anyway, you know, there was guidelines that you had to live by as a team and to abide by as a team that I thought separated us. Because let me tell you, there was a lot of teams that had a whole lot more talent than we did, but there was none more disciplined or worked harder than we did. And Bud set that standard because he had the guys and the players that he put that in their hands. You know, the Marshalls, the Ellers, the Tarkingtons, the Chingahalls, the Aldermans. I can go on and on about all the leaders we had on that team, you know, that kept you in place to let you know, hey, we don't do it this way. This is the way we do it here in Minnesota. And then when I got traded to New England, I could see what they were talking about. Now, at that time, New England was one of those teams that you just put a check mark up by their name because, you know, that was a win. But the thing about it was that when I got there, they had a whole lot more talent than we did, no question. But the maturity level of our team in Minnesota was a whole lot different than in New England because we knew how to win. And those guys didn't. They had a lot of talent, more so than we had in Minnesota. But they just, it just wasn't put together right.
Chuck, good stuff. Appreciate it, especially the insight on both Bud and Jim Brown. We'll talk to you again. I don't know. We got mini camps and training camps and everything else.
Yeah.
NFL's 24/7, 365.
Yeah, two of the greatest in football history. I had a chance to, share some time with.
Yeah, no doubt.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, guys.
He is Chuck Foreman, former Vikings great, should be in the Hall of Fame. Right here on 10,000 Takes. Back with more after this timeout. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10,000 Takes rolls along. Good to talk to Chuck Foreman. And as I said at the end of that last segment, the NFL continues to dominate the headlines. And they were in the Twin Cities this week. The owners were. And they have made some more decisions with regard to how this upcoming season is going to play out. One of which is, I know your favorite, Thursday Night Football. They're going to allow flexing in the last, 3 or 4 weeks of the season. So they could move your game. So let's say you got the Vikings and the Bears playing on Sunday and you got tickets to the game. Well, they can say, we're going to play that game on Thursday instead because Al Michaels and Prime wants it on Thursday.
Yeah, and there are some NFL owners. And, yeah, Egan was the center of the NFL universe this week with the owners' meetings. But guys like Mark Davis, Las Vegas, John Mara, one of the blue blood guys with the New York Giants, they are against this. They think it's a disrespect to the fandom. A lot of NFL fans travel. We know that. People make trips when they see that schedule come out. And so what happens if you book your ticket now in May to go see Minnesota play, maybe Green Bay on the road? Well, that's maybe that's a drivable trip. But let's say you're going to go to, a further trip. Florida, yeah, or Denver, wherever. And they change it. And, you try to change your airfare or try to change your rental car or your lodging.
Or your vacation time.
Right. So I don't like it. I think Thursday Night Football should just be scrapped and only played on Thanksgiving. I will never be on board with TNF. Never.
All right. Quickly, we only have a few seconds here. They are also going to add college football's rule where you can fair catch a kickoff and you get the ball at the 25.
What the NFL is trying to do is eliminate the greatness we've seen over the decades from guys like Gale Sayers and Devin Hester and, now Cordero Patterson, some of the great return guys. The NFL eventually wants to get rid of kickoff returns. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, well, this is another step that direction. All right, takes of the day coming up next. Stay with us. This is 10,000 Takes.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10K Takes on television, another episode almost completed. That means it's time for Takes of the Day. We'll find out if you're an angry American, salty skipper, maybe you're a giddy guardian. What is it this week?
Well, as you know, I spent a little over a week in Africa last week, and I was over there promoting the game of baseball, basically, in a small country in West Africa called Benin. And I've been involved in this project for the last 13 years, bringing baseball to that country, introducing it along with my partner, Gary Tonziger. And so now what we were over there for was to get a field built. They've been playing, but they play on scrappy ground and so on and so forth. So the reason I'm talking about it today is next week on the show, we'll present a full feature on that in one of our segments on how things are going over there, some of the things that we went through while we were there and while we've been there 3 times now over the last 7 years. And it's interesting the lifestyle and, the fact that, of course, baseball was completely foreign to them when we first introduced it. But now there's, probably several hundred players playing, and we got coaches and training. The Japanese came in and were doing a training session while we were there. So don't think that it isn't being recognized because, they want to bring kids and players that they find. They're trying to, they're going everywhere to find talent. And Africa's a big continent. Obviously, Benin is just one small country.
Right.
But, they're trying to do things to get players perhaps to go play in the Japanese Professional League, because next to Major League Baseball, that's probably the second best league on the planet. So, so interesting stuff, and we've got a lot more video and photos that we'll bring to you next week in that report that I do from Benin, West Africa.
And the mood meter says, happy camper. I guess that makes sense.
That's fair.
All right. Well, my take of the day, we're going to talk about a guy who once upon a time played for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yes, he did.
And at the time of this recording is 1 win away from the NBA Finals with the Miami Heat, an 8 seed who is blowing through the postseason. And it's another example of the Timberwolves messing something up. They made a blockbuster deal to bring in Jimmy Butler from Chicago. They made the announcement at the Mall of America Rotunda. I was there. I saw it. It was cool. I said, I'm all in on Jimmy Buckets. Well, as you know, it didn't quite work out because he's an alpha male. He's ultra competitive. You had a young Karl Anthony Towns and a young Andrew Wiggins who were more like the millennial type and saw the game of basketball through a different lens than Jimmy Buckets. So Jimmy decides, these guys aren't foot soldiers. I don't want to go into the trenches with them. I'm going to talk my way out of here. And he had some erratic behavior. I can't defend it. But he had a plan. His MO was, I got to get out of Minnesota. He went to Philly. Now he's in Miami, and you might be seeing him soon winning an NBA title, taking a confetti shower. And it's another example of another player that gets away from Minnesota and thrives elsewhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of folks talking about, should they trade Karl Anthony Towns now? And you've said to me, boy, the minute they trade him, you know where he's going to end up. in the NBA Finals.
Based on past history, keep Cat here.
Yeah.
And maybe Cat will watch Jimmy Buckets and say, yeah, maybe Jimmy had some things I need to incorporate in my game.
Yeah, no
Be
doubt.
that alpha male. And on that note, let's FedEx out those thank yous. One goes to David Weld, Rocky, Chuck Foreman. For Wally, I'm Eric Sink. So long, this is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.